Hey everybody, great to see you. As many of you know, I coach girls softball, and one of the lessons that I try to impart on the young women I coach every year is the absolute importance of their being able to advocate for themselves, being able to advocate on behalf of others. And thinking through that today, it reminded me of a story, and it goes back to the summer of 1970. When a young woman teacher in Chesterfield County, Virginia, became pregnant. And she went into her school to let them know, once the year started, that she was pregnant. And at the time, there was a mandatory maternity leave policy in place at her school, which dictated that any woman who became pregnant who worked for the school was required by the end of the first trimester to stop teaching. Well, this teacher taught high school seniors and approached the principal of the school and asked, can I just stay with my class through the springtime? I'm not due until the end of April. Maybe I could stay till March or so just to see my kids through the college process. An absolute no. No thinking involved, just no. The teacher went back and asked, can I stay through the end of the year so that my kids, these students who I have a responsibility for as seniors, have gotten through the college application process? I can help them with their essays. I can help them with any recommendations they need. Once again, without any meaningful thought, the answer given was simply no. And what the school told this teacher was, you have two choices. You either can abide by the dictates of our mandatory maternity leave policy, or we can fire you. And this teacher really didn't like either of those options, and she brought a lawsuit against the school board of Chesterfield County, Virginia, claiming that this mandatory maternity leave policy was discriminatory and that it, without getting too deep into the weeds, violated the 14th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America. And she sued in the Eastern District of Virginia. And understand, from all I've seen, this woman was not someone to create a fuss. She was certainly not litigious. Filing this lawsuit was completely out of character for her. But in reading about her, what was clear was that she felt a responsibility to her students. She felt a responsibility to other women who would be in similar situations that she was in. And she felt a responsibility, frankly, to herself. And this case actually went to trial before a judge by the name of Judge Marriage in the Eastern District of Virginia. And it was incredible to read through some of the testimony that was taken during this trial. One of the members of the school board actually said out loud that the reason this teacher should no longer be permitted to teach was because they were afraid that the students would think she swallowed a watermelon seed and had a watermelon growing inside of her stomach. This was 1970. Another member of the school board testified that he was worried that in the event of a fire, she would not be able to get out of the school quickly enough, to which Judge Marriage shot back very quickly. My understanding is in the event of a fire, you're supposed to walk out calmly and in a single file line. And ultimately, the district court found on this teacher's behalf, found that the mandatory maternity leave policy did discriminate, was violative of the 14th Amendment. The school board appealed, and at the Court of Appeals, the teacher won again. And then the school board appealed again to what was called an en banc panel, all of the judges of the Court of Appeals. And at that en banc panel, the teacher actually lost. Now, interestingly, there was another case happening at around the same time in Cleveland, brought by a teacher whose name was Carolyn LaFleur. And when the LaFleur case reached its finality at the appeals court there found on LaFleur's behalf. Now, interestingly, what can happen in a situation like this, where there are similar operative facts and there are opposite decisions on the same legal claims, the United States Supreme Court actually will hear a case like that. And that's precisely what happened here. And in 1974, the United States Supreme Court decided a case captioned LaFleur versus Cleveland Board of Education and Cohen versus the School Board of Chesterfield County, Virginia, on behalf of the teachers. And in a case that was hailed all over the country as a victory for all working women, Carolyn LaFleur and Susan Cohen, a person I also happen to call Mom, made history. And the reason it happened, from a leadership standpoint, the import of this case, other than the fact that my mom is just a badass, the import is, from a leadership standpoint, how crucial it is for us to advocate. And that advocation comes really from me in three different parts. The first is advocating on behalf of those who don't have a voice. In my mom's case, it was on behalf of those students, these students who told stories about spending time with my mom and my dad in their apartment in Richmond, Virginia, talking through current events, talking through things that were going on in their lives. My mom felt a responsibility to these students who didn't have their own voice in the eyes of the school board, to make sure that she was able to stay on with them for as long as possible and to see them through this college process, a process that was incredibly important to them and which many of their parents had not gone through themselves. Number one, we have to be able to advocate on behalf of those who don't have the voice, who don't have the ability or the willingness to speak up for themselves. Second, we have to be able to advocate on behalf of the greater good. In this case, Carolyn LaFleur, my mom, advocating on behalf of women everywhere, pregnant women, for whom there was absolutely no articulable basis for them to have to stop working, in these cases, to have to stop teaching, to advocate against these outdated, these anachronistic, these antiquated stereotypes. My goodness, they thought she swallowed a watermelon seed. You've got to be able to run out of a building in the event there's a fire. Those were really pretexts for, we don't think pregnant women should be able to continue teaching because for some absurd reason, they are less qualified in their pregnant state. We advocate on behalf of those who don't have a voice. We advocate on behalf of the greater good and rally against these anachronistic, these antiquated ways of thinking. And I can speak very personally from my mom's perspective, because I've talked about this with her for countless hours throughout the course of my life. The importance of advocating for yourself. When you see something that is simply wrong, an injustice, a better way of doing something, we have a responsibility, not just to those around us, but to ourselves as well, to ensure that our voice is heard. As I tell the young women who I coach, if you're not going to advocate for yourself, ain't nobody else going to care. We advocate on behalf of those who don't have the voice. We advocate on behalf of the greater good, and we advocate for ourselves on our own behalves. We use it for good. We use it for those who can't or won't. We use it to make the world, or in our specific instances, our workplaces, better. Folks, thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for commenting. Thanks so much for sharing. Hope to see you real soon.